Well, hey, Audra, great to have you here. So excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
You got it, man. It's so exciting. You know, when I heard your story and just your story of growth, I thought it was so cool because, I mean, there's not too many people that grow up on a cattle farm and then have family businesses all around them and then grow into, this entrepreneur that you are today. And so I'd love for you just to talk a little bit about that growing up period, because to me, when I heard your story, it sounds like that's a forming of your foundation, but it's also such a growth part of your journey as well.
It is, and it's actually quite a fun story to tell, and it's dynamic in a lot of different ways. So the background of this is that both my parents grew up in Miami, so they were very urban people, right? My
Yeah.
grandfather started a plumbing supply business back in the 1940s, and in the late 1970s, there was a federal tax incentive to corporations that invested in agricultural land.
Okay.
And so my grandfather, being the shrewd business owner that he was, with an eighth grade education, mind you,
Wow.
he decided to go back to the place that he was born and raised, which was Boston, Georgia. It's outside of a little town called Thomasville, which is just north of Tallahassee, where I live now.
Yeah.
And he decided to purchase 2,000 acres of agricultural land
Wow.
because he wanted to take advantage of the tax incentive, but he also wanted to reinvest in the place that he grew up.
Nice.
Um, and I don't know, it could have been a bit of a, gotcha moment. Um, so my parents in the late 1970s, 79, the Liberty Riot started in Miami.
Oh, wow.
And they were kind of looking around going, I don't know if we want to raise our children here.
Mm.
The alternative was the middle of the woods,
Yeah.
which is what they chose. So my older two sisters were born in Miami and raised until they were, I think my oldest sister was 5, or 4. And they moved to the farm. So I grew up in the middle of nowhere. We were the last to receive dial-up internet.
Oh my goodness.
Um, but what it afforded me was that, I played on acres and acres of land, and we
Mm.
grew up. My grandfather raised and bred Simmental cattle and Appaloosa horses and quarter horses.
Wow.
And so I grew up around herds of horses and herds of cows, learning how to, play fort in acres and acres of land.
That sounds
In
fun.
quite an idealistic kind of situation. It was really interesting to grow up there, and I lived there till I think we moved when I was 16.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, we had family gatherings, and my cousins lived across the ranch
Oh,
from
nice.
me, and my grandparents lived down the street half the year when they weren't in Miami. But it was really neat to kind of grow up with, I can't tell you, the night sky that you see
Oh,
in the
I'm
middle of nowhere
sure.
that has no light pollution. It
Yeah.
was amazing.
It sounds
So yeah,
idyllic. It sounds amazing. Like
it
a
was.
idyllic kid childhood, right?
Yeah, yeah. And there was some trials and tribulations. I mean,
I'm
which we have
sure.
some funny family stories about, city dwellers coming to live on acres of land, not knowing what half an acre of corn actually produces, and then you eat corn, 5 times a day for the next 6 months.
Right. Oh my gosh.
But,
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun. It was really,
Yeah.
really enjoyable. So.
Talk a little bit about the other family businesses, because I think that's really interesting as well. So it wasn't just the farm and it wasn't just the cattle, but there were other businesses too, if my memory is correct.
Yes. So family business was and has been an integral part of our daily dinner conversations.
Mm.
As for my grandfather, as kind of the patriarch of the family, having started this plumbing business, that his children were employees, his children were partners. There were,
Mm.
ups and downs of this conversation of ownership and income. And it really set the stage for me to understand the dynamics of a family business, which are quite different than when you just work for a corporation or you work for somebody. It
Yeah.
becomes it becomes a living being of the family.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a push and pull of ideas and traditions and hierarchy and new ideas and innovation and the acceptance or the disregard of those ideas. Um, Primarily it was that business. But as
Okay.
I grew up, and he passed away, and that became a second generation, and now which is a third generation. My mom ran her own law practice.
Hmm.
My middle sister now has her own veterinary animal hospital.
Oh, wow.
And my oldest sister runs her own law practice, and I run my coaching business. And then
Yeah.
as sisters, we also invest in real estate together.
It's amazing.
So this moving of constant movement of having this kind of third child or third sibling
Yeah.
in the family and conversation has always just been a part of my life.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
sure. Well, and it probably when you have dinner conversations, it's probably interspersed with, a little bit of personal stuff and then business things. And yeah, I totally get that routine.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, I went to visit my sister today to return some Tupperware, and I'm sitting there talking to her about a conversation that I had with the CFP in regard, like our certified financial planner,
Yeah,
in regards to our family business. And then we get
sure.
into discussions because our mom is in her late 70s to almost 80. So we're now having to kind of wrap her needs into what we manage on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely, 100%.
It's,
She constantly sends me and we send each other, like, what do you think about this piece of real estate?
oh,
Just random.
yeah,
So we end up having conversations about business always. I mean, it's a part of our
yeah.
family.
Yeah,
So
and that's pretty interesting because you've been around family business and so that's been a part of your life, and yet you also then started your coaching business. And when we were talking before we recorded here, we were talking about starting businesses and starting them afraid, and I loved when you said that. There's just something that went off inside of me because there's something I think that a lot of individuals think that when somebody starts a business, they're fully confident. They've got things. They've got their business plan all wrapped up, and let's go, and we're ready to rock and roll. Now, some I don't discount that, but at least some of the business owners that I've talked to, it's usually a little bit of let's start this, and I think I've got a right direction, but there's some fear and trepidation there too. And
yeah,
so tell me about when you started your own business and what that felt like.
yeah. So true entrepreneurship is the ability to tolerate risk to a certain extent, right?
Yeah,
Because we understand that, and you and I, as coaches, we understand that you marry the goal, you don't marry the plan. And
right.
so when it comes to entrepreneurship and starting businesses, you have a goal. You want to at least think it out a little bit
Yeah,
because you got to know some basic answers. But for the most part, it is doing it scared, and it's to this day. Um, I, put forth an idea literally yesterday and was like, I don't know how this is going to be received, but we'll see how it goes. And a little bit of it is testing the market because
sure.
you make decisions based upon the available information to you at the time. And we
Yeah,
understand that that information, if we take 5 steps forward, we're going to have a little more information than we had 5 steps ago.
yeah,
So when we start businesses, we have to understand that it's never going to go exactly the way that we think it's going to go unless we've
right.
done this 500 times and we're really good at estimating what the outcome is going to be. Otherwise, we're really just taking our best guess at it.
Yeah.
And that we're going to learn more information as we test the market,
Mm,
as we talk to people like you, and we like, okay, so I have this idea. What's your feedback or what's your take? Because
hmm.
I'm not going to be able to see it through the lens that you're going to be able to see it through.
Sure.
So if we understand that we're moving forward with an inherent risk, and that risk being that we don't have all of the knowledge, then we do the best that we can. We try
Mm,
to mitigate financial costs associated with if we've made a mistake here.
yeah.
By gathering information as freely as we can to make the best decision in the next version of this plan.
Yeah.
So I actually quite enjoy that process of
Yeah.
learning and a little bit of risk taking and testing the market and
Sure.
seeing, is there a foothold out there for this idea?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's frustrating when you put a whole lot of effort into something, and then the market's like, yeah, no, this is a dumb idea.
Yeah, right,
But
right.
then, I didn't spend $40,000 to determine that this is a dumb idea.
True.
So,
Yeah.
see what you can do about testing the market for as limited amount of cost as possible. But
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
it's the ability to understand that this is a learning process.
Mm,
And it's not going to be perfect, nor should it be perfect.
yeah.
Because if it was perfect and it was already, you have all the answers, then that means that somebody else is doing it probably better than you would be able to do it anyway.
Yeah,
So
yeah, for sure.
enjoy that process.
Yeah, and that is it's a process. It's a and there's a process to starting a business, and then there's a process to running a business as well. And I know you talk to your clients a lot about that as well. Before I go a different direction, though, one of the things that I know is that you were in the foreclosure business as well. And so one of the things that you learned along your journey was what could go wrong with a business. You were talking about, mitigating risk. And so I guess tell me a little bit and tell us about like, what did you learn about that? What goes wrong with businesses, and why do they, fail?
It was an interesting time. So yes, I worked in the foreclosure process. I have a background, my whole family obviously has a background in law. My mom's a lawyer,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
sister's a lawyer, my dad's a lawyer. So when times got tough during 2008 and 2009 in the hospitality industry, I, reached out to who's doing the most in this space right now. And so I worked for 5 years in the bankruptcy department of a corporate law firm.
Hmm.
We worked for the creditors, right? So we worked for the
Okay.
banks, or we worked for the people that put businesses out of business. And what I did learn is that you need to, a business needs to listen, understand, and pivot with the feedback that they hear.
Hmm.
So if you have a customer, or if you have a vendor, or if you have a supplier, or if you have a market segment that is giving you an extraordinary amount of feedback about a problem area, then don't take that lightly. You either
Yeah.
have a problem with your customer segment, they're not being treated properly, they're not receiving your product or service, or your vendor is not happy with you, your supplier is not happy with you. They actually have power
Hmm.
when it comes to where the rubber meets the road. You can
Yeah.
ignore them for as long as you want to, but there's going to be a consequence on the other
Hmm.
side of that. The most beneficial thing that you can do is listen to that feedback, look internally, whether it's as a leadership problem, or a core process problem, or a
Hmm.
systems problem, or a monetary problem, and modify your behavior as a business to compensate for that.
Hmm.
As small business owners, we have an incredible ability to pivot and change and modify, adjust, and be flexible, where large companies like Amazon take so much more time to do the same thing,
Hmm. Yeah.
which is why we can flex and move inside spaces of change as small business owners. We don't like
Yeah.
it, but if you can get to the point where you're listening to that feedback and
Hmm.
modifying the behavior of the business, whatever that means,
Yeah.
um, to take that into consideration, then you have a far better chance of success through that adaptability and that flexibility. A lot of
Hmm.
the businesses that I saw had a problem out in their market, or they had a problem with their customers, or they had a problem with their suppliers and vendors, and they ended up that those vendors, like an HOA, can throw you into bankruptcy or throw you into foreclosure because
Hmm.
they have a right.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the big thing, is listen, ask for
Yeah.
that feedback, and do something with it.
Well, and I guess my curiosity leads me to think about what what causes businesses, especially small businesses, to not listen to that. I would think that, for the most part, you'd want to be able to listen to your customers, listen to your vendors, and listen to the marketplace. So did you see that maybe there was either a business owner that thought they were right and they just had they an ego that got in the way, or what did you find? Yeah, you're nodding. So
Oftentimes,
okay.
oftentimes, and it can be multi-generational. We've done it this way for years, or this is
Mm,
the way that we do things, and this is our
yeah,
process. And you know,
yeah.
not every customer is our customer, and not the customer's not always right. I mean, there's so many excuses. I mean, in human beings, our brain is change resistant.
Yeah.
It does not like change. So you're like,
Yeah.
okay, so we're going to change up our whole schedule. And, we've been diagnosed with diabetes or whatever. I just picked that one.
Yeah.
But so you can't eat sugar anymore, right? Or you can't have this. Yes, but every meal ends with a sweet treat.
Yeah.
And so I'm not willing to compromise my sweet treat just because, like, why should I have to change my behavior? Because the feedback from your environment has changed. And
Yeah.
you must change your behavior, or this is going to be a persistent problem that's going to lead down the road to something serious, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many people, and we know it. I don't go to the gym as much as I should, even though my doctor says you should go to the gym and you need strength training or whatever. But when I get up in the morning, in that moment of that decision, I choose no. And business owners are no different because it's human nature.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
you need to change the process for which, you pay your vendor. And they're like, no, I'm going to write a check. Well, we don't take checks anymore. Well, then they delay not paying at all until it
Right.
becomes a problem. And then the
Mm.
vendor's like, whoa, 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 you haven't paid in 6 months. I'm going to put a lien against your property, or I'm going to, force you into
Yeah.
bankruptcy or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So overcoming internal human nature at the moment where the decision has to be made to take
Yeah.
action.
That's really fascinating. And one of the things, as you were talking, you talked about um, a generational type of issue, and you use that word, and I'm thinking about so many generations in the workforce right now, and I know that oftentimes, because humans are resistant to change, that an older generation who has been around for a little while and doing things the way they've done them for a while could be resistant towards a younger generation who sees the fact that the world doesn't do checks anymore, and we do ACH transfers, we do Venmo, we
Right.
do PayPal, we do
Yeah.
all of these other
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And so how do we overcome that? How do you overcome that generational difference in our perspectives? I'm kind of posing the question to you, and also kind of out loud to myself as
Yeah.
well.
It, the challenge can sometimes come in the form of, well, I just don't want to change. The challenge can also come in the form of relinquishing control.
Mm,
So we have to really
yeah.
understand, if the older generation is pushing back on change, why?
Hmm.
And sometimes it's change for the sake of change.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a rollover of power, which they're
Hmm.
not necessarily ready for.
Sure.
So I think having those deep conversations, if the previous generation is willing,
Mm,
because they know that at some point that they're going to have to step down, or they're going to
yeah.
pass away, and the next generation is going to have to take hold. So
Yeah.
they can either help design that transition, or they can just be resistant until the end. And then that means that the next generation doesn't have a full understanding of the capacity of what they're going to be taking on, because they
Hmm.
haven't had to participate.
Right.
Um, and it could be forced upon them. So I think that having the conversation of how this transition of power is going to happen is most beneficial, and allowing the next generation to almost cross train in all the different departments so
Yeah.
that they can get a good understanding. They may have ideas, and you may have to have a conversation. Okay, so let's sit down and talk about ideas on a quarterly basis, or
Yeah.
twice a year, or at the end of the
Yeah.
year after you've been in this position with, doing these functions. Let's sit down. Don't come to me every 3 days with a new idea,
Yeah.
because you're going to feel shut down, and I'm going to feel like you're just trying to make change. So let's
Right.
organize this conversation a little bit so that everybody doesn't feel like
Mm,
they're being stepped on.
yeah. I love that.
Because the second generation or third generation or whatever, the next one in line will end up feeling shut down.
Yeah. It's true.
We should, I've seen an inefficiency here. We should change to ACH transfer only. We should do these things. And the person that's still trying to run the business gets like overwhelmed. And so then you have this
Yeah.
clash of the titans, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
When a generational transition it can be very efficient, effective,
Mm,
peaceful, encouraged. I mean, there's
yeah.
all these positive things, but
Yeah. Yeah.
oftentimes you know, the older one won't leave because they
Right.
don't feel like that they can transfer it to the safety of the other person's hands
Yeah.
when the
Yeah.
safety of the other person's hands is within their own control.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting. And then you
Yeah.
have to go to Christmas dinner together, and then everybody's frustrated.
Right, right. Yeah, when it's a
Yeah.
family business, it's just there's so many different dynamics. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I am noticing, so I've got some clients that I'm working with in succession planning, and it's the ones who where the leader, the senior leader, the patriarch or the matriarch in this, in one case,
Mm-hmm.
if they're willing to do that training and actually be very methodical and think ahead, it goes a lot smoother. And I'm not saying it goes smooth because we're all human beings, and especially a
Yeah.
business owner, they've paid in blood and sweat and tears and sleepless nights. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's not always it's not
Mm-hmm.
always easy. It may be simple, it may be a simple process, but it's not easy because of that
That's right.
that transition. So I think it's interesting to be able to take a look at succession planning, especially in family businesses, from the
Mm-hmm.
perspective of looking far enough ahead, and then, quite honestly, having the humility to be able to allow that next generation to come
Yeah.
alongside and learn.
And it takes an understanding of our own mortality, right?
Yeah, yeah,
The
for
older
sure.
generation has to understand that for this concept, for this generational wealth building tool, you have to be able to let go at some
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
But to do that, it is also your responsibility to bestow upon that next generation the tools that they need to be able to run it
Mm-hmm.
and understand that it's never going to be exactly the way that you would do it
Yeah,
because
it's
they have a
true.
different perspective. They grew up different. They have similar values and morals because it's the same family generally, but
Yeah.
the legacy will continue, um, but updated for the
Mm-hmm.
next person's vision.
Yeah.
And you can see this, through major corporations, whether they went through family or they went through leadership changes. I mean, you can go back and see the transition that has happened even in Disney with the different leaders from Walt Disney to
Mm-hmm.
whoever was next. I think his brother was next or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then to all of the different CEOs and the stamp that they put on that that conglomerate now.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not just a company
Right.
and how they've grown it in the way that they thought was going to be the most outlasting or long lasting or important or whatever. Um, and same with family owned businesses. It's, the generation that's come in, the third generation now that is the family business has brought in technologies and a way for their relationship with their suppliers and their customers to have ease of transition. I mean, they reinvented the showroom, but it would kind of died in the middle there. Like they closed down the showroom. Nobody was coming in to look at new material. They didn't need to
Mm.
see it. They're contractors. They're like, we'll take 3 of those and 47
Sure.
of those.
Yeah.
My grandfather had it was one of his pride and joys was to have a showroom.
Uh,
So,
hmm.
but now we have all of that backed by technology. So you can order
Sure.
online, you can see all the products online, you can order from anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And so the vision changes slightly, but the core values don't.
Mm.
And that's the thing
Mm.
that your legacy is. That's what you're passing on. The
Yeah.
relationship that you have with your customers or whatever is the core values of your company,
Yep.
whether it's philanthropic or whatever. Those are the things that generally last through the generations. How you
Mm.
do business changes because the environment changes.
The environment changes. Yeah, and
So,
I'm so glad you said that, because I think that for those businesses who, if they're family businesses who have a legacy, I think it's really important for them to establish their values, or at least articulate them if they haven't already, and make sure that in the succession planning you allow that next generation to put forward their vision for the next part of the business. Because if you don't, then, like you said, I mean, the values could change, or they may stray from the values that you really established as the legacy business founder.
right, right. And I think there's something to be said about participating in that transition as
Yeah.
opposed to holding back and kind of refusing to allow the next generation to blossom. Because then there's animosity, and you don't want animosity in the business.
Uh,
You want that this is a growth tool that feeds our collective families, right?
right.
Because you have one, and then they have kids, and then one takes over. But
Mhm.
so you end up with like cousins in leadership. I mean,
Yeah.
it blossoms out, right?
Right.
And if there's animosity there, then that creates animosity between the leadership, and it's no longer this cohort that's running this legacy or this. Um, and so being very mindful about how that transition is going to happen and
Mm.
participating in that um, allows for a, a much more productive, efficient, happy, content culture,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Because
Right.
the leadership is the culture of the entire business.
Yeah.
I remember my mom used to tell me that when she would go to work for her dad, that if something happened in the business, that he would yell at his kids before he yelled at any of the employees. Because if he yelled at his kids, and because he could be as mean as he wanted to his own kids, then he never had to yell at an employee because they were all like, well, if he's going to treat them like that,
Yeah.
then I'm not. No,
Right.
I'm good. I'll
I'm
stay in
good.
line. Thanks very much. So
Yeah.
he used them as the first scapegoats,
Oh
and
man.
and they knew it. This was an aware thing.
Yeah.
Um, but it was certainly a lesson taught.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure. I'm sure. What
He
now?
was tough.
I'm sure. I'm sure. I know, that generation, they lived
Oh
through a
yeah.
lot. I mean, they lived through a lot, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious what you're seeing in, the entrepreneur space, because I know that you work with it's Florida State, I think. You work with the
hmm
entrepreneur and startups world there. What are some of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs in the world that we're living in right now?
So yes, I work, I'm a mentor with, so Florida State University here in Tallahassee has the first freestanding college of entrepreneurship in the
Cool.
world. And it was kind of a gift. I don't know how to describe it. So Jim Moran is a gentleman that um, it's a long story, but he gifted a donation to Florida State to start the first freestanding College of Entrepreneurship. And in
Okay.
addition, there's the Jim Moran Institute, which um, so the College of Entrepreneurship helps college level students that want to be entrepreneurs, and the Jim Moran Institute helps everybody else. Like if
Okay.
you already have a small business, then you can go to them for resources.
I see.
What am I seeing? So the trend is it used to be that you worked for, a company for 10 or 15 years, and you that would basically be your mentor, your think tank.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would have an idea and you would go out and you would start a business.
Yeah.
That's not the trend now. I mean, people still do it that way,
Mm-hmm.
but the majority, we have students that are coming out as entrepreneurs that want to start businesses, and but they have no think tank. They have no space in which to have an inborn mentor. So they're going out and they're starting businesses, or they're wanting to start businesses with no mentor in play.
Okay.
So they don't know where the resources are.
Mm.
They don't, they've never even registered a business on Sunbiz. They've never led anything, very little. Um, they've never had a team or employees to work with. They've never had a boss that, taught them to play the roadmap. So they're kind of out there trying to give it a go with very little business acumen or resources or understanding. So
Mm.
in what I love is that not only do I get to work with established clients that already own businesses, but my give back, kind of my tithe, is to students that are starting this journey with no knowledge.
Mm.
They're not ready for a business coach per se,
Sure.
but they need a sounding board. They need a mentor. They need a person to even like turn a light bulb on in a room so that it can at least shine a little bit of light on, okay, this is the general direction of business ownership.
Uh-huh.
These are some ideas. This is how
Right.
all of these things come to play within a business.
Yeah.
Um, Organization, culture, marketing, uh, your finances in play. Like, what does that even mean? What is a business plan and why do we write one?
Mm-hmm.
Um, do I have to stick to the plan? Am I married to the plan? No, but should think about all of these parts of a business.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the trend in entrepreneurship. I have this idea, I can take it to market, but what do I do if people like it? What do I do if people don't like it? So
Yeah,
that's
so
what we're kind of, you know,
trying
how
to
do we take
navigate.
that feedback and do something with it?
Yeah, right. Well, and it sounds like too, you're helping them to make those kinds of insights, or at least gain some of those insights, and then being
Hmm.
able to, take it and move, one direction or another. If the market likes it, great, move forward. If it doesn't
Hmm.
like it, then what do we do with that? And is it all
Hmm.
lost, or, asking good questions about that particular situation?
And there's a lot of confusing information. It's an onslaught, if in a lot of different spaces, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or even
Mm,
researching and Googling, like, what do I do if I have an idea? I mean,
yeah,
it is like drinking from a fire hose.
sure.
And so sometimes it's good to narrow the scope of the voice,
Hmm.
um, because otherwise it's overwhelming. And you just can't take in, I mean, building businesses for dummies, how to create a marketing strategy. I mean, you could absorb and like just fetal position all the information that's out there, and then you just,
Right,
is this even a good idea before you've even asked three people, hey, would you buy this thing?
right,
um
right.
so it's
Well,
information overload is a real thing.
Well, and I think it kind of comes back to the idea that we started with in terms of we can analyze all we want to, but until we actually take a leap and make that leap of faith and try it out, experiment and do it afraid, we can't really know until we take some action.
Yeah. And it's surprising how receptive people are, if you ask.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just, you know, you just ask. I mean,
Yeah.
you close your eyes and push send. And I've
Yeah.
done that so many times that I
Right.
could I could talk myself out of it every single time. But sometimes it's just let's just see, because
Yeah.
they either ignore you or they give you feedback, and both of those are an answer.
Yeah, exactly.
You know this.
100%. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, anytime you're reaching out, I mean, it's sales, it's marketing, it's all of those things. You just never know. So you have to push send. You have to pick up the phone. You have to jump on a Zoom call and find out and discover. And I think that's the beauty of it and the fun of it as well.
Yeah, and it's surprising how welcoming people are. We think, even
Yeah,
when we
that's
talk
true.
about cold calling or just calling people and just asking their opinion, I tell clients sometimes, if you could ask this person this thing, what would that do for you?
Hmm.
Would that feedback be valuable? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, so why haven't you just called? Well, because maybe they won't answer. And I'm like, maybe they won't.
Right.
But likely they're not going to be like, forget you,
Yeah.
ah, and then hang
Yeah.
up on you. That's generally, I mean, unless you're calling for votes, which
Right.
this
Yeah,
happens.
it's
But
true.
most people are like, I'm a business owner. I've been in your position. I know exactly how hard it is to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
I got 2 minutes. What do you want to know?
Right.
And people are really helpful.
And respecting their time as well. So
Yeah,
don't if they say they've got 2 minutes, don't try to keep them on the phone for 30. Right?
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have one question. I have this idea.
Yep.
Do you think it's crap?
Right. Right. Yeah.
And they'll ask you a couple of questions, and they'll say, I think you need to research more, or I think you need to think this out a little more, or I
Hmm.
don't think that you're looking at the right target market, or I don't think that your price is right, or they'll give you one or two feedback, and you're like, thank you very much, and then you have
Yeah.
more information than you had before.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, you
Uh,
do things scared always.
all the time. All the time. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, Audra, is so we have a lot of emerging leaders who listen to this podcast, and emerging leaders simply are leaders who maybe first time people leaders. They could be in a leadership position for the first time, even though they may not be leading a whole bunch of people, but they're new to leadership, and they're new to maybe even entrepreneurship. And so I'm kind of curious, what advice would you give a new leader or an emerging leader, just in today's marketplace and in today's environment?
Gosh, so many things come to mind.
I know it's a broad
So
question,
yeah, it is a broad question. That's
but
okay. I like it. Um, I would say share your vision, seek feedback, don't complain down, ask for buy-in or ask for participation. The majority of the population, as a personality profiler, which I am through DISC and EQ, the majority of the population, like a staggering almost 70% of the population, are stable individuals, which means if you're complaining down, then they feel like that it's a rocky foundation and that maybe it's not going to survive and da 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 da. But they also don't particularly like change. So by wrapping them into the conversation of how do you think is the best approach to this, gives them the ability to participate in change, which makes it a little less stable for them, and then encourages them to give their opinion. And don't shoot them down. Even if you disagree with it, say thank you very much for that, and I'll take that into consideration. But having your team involved in the journey with you makes it more exciting for them, makes them more loyal to you, and gives you perspective that you don't see. Be open to that feedback. Feedback and communication is everything. So that would be my.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, feedback and communication are two, I think, key elements for any leader to be able to make sure that they're clarifying, getting clear on expectations, being able to listening generously so that they understand what the situation is. So I love that.
And if they ask a lot of questions, that means that you don't have your brain wrapped around how to explain what you do.
Yeah.
So that gives you an opportunity to grow.
Yeah, exactly. Audra, this has been so fun. I love just your experience, and I know we've went a whole bunch of different places today, but you have such an eclectic background of business and coaching and entrepreneurialism. It was really fun to kind of pick your mind for just a few minutes. What's something that you'd like to share with the audience that maybe I haven't asked you, or that you'd like to be able to just share in the closing moments of our time together?
Don't underestimate the power of investing in your own personal growth, whether that's professional or personal. Set time aside to continue to grow, because your industry is going to grow. Your ability as a leader is going to grow. Give yourself a little grace. It's hard. It is. Owning a business, like you said earlier, is easy on paper, but it's really difficult in application, and it's going to challenge you. And if you're not being challenged, then you're not pushing out of your own comfort zone. So expect that you're going to wear a bunch of hats until you can afford to, delegate those hats to other people. But keep going. We're called to own businesses because we have a desire to change our environment or contribute to our community or whatever that thing is. Small businesses run this world more than we think that they do. And so don't give up. But seek outside counsel if you need it. There's a lot of professionals that are available to you in your environment, and pick their brain. They're there to help you grow. Don't give up.
I love it. Yeah, don't give up. I think that's.
Do it scared. It's all right. Close your eyes and push send. It's fine. It's gonna be fine. You're not doing brain surgery, so it's okay. It'll work itself out one way or the other.
Yeah, I love that. That is great advice, Audra. Thank you for the time that we've been able to spend here together today. How can people get in touch with you and find out more about you and some of the work you do? And because you do some coaching, you do some mentoring, and how do they find out more about you?
Absolutely. It's first and foremost, it has been a delight. I enjoy our conversations always, David. So thanks for having me. Yes. So my website is www.audrafournier.com. That's AudraFournier.com. Or you can find me at Audra Fournier on Instagram, or you can look me up Audra Fournier on Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm kind of everywhere. Feel free to shoot me an email or reach out through Messenger. I'm here to be a resource, a mentor, an advisor, a guide, or sometimes just to have a fun conversation. So come find me.
I love it. Thank you so much, Audra. It's been a delight to have you here.
Thank you so much. I look forward to maybe doing it again someday.
Absolutely.